India's journey with the United Nations is quite a remarkable one. As a founding member of the United Nations, India's contribution to implementing the goals of the United Nations Charter and to the evolution of UN specialized agencies and programs has been substantial, in many ways quite extraordinary. India was among the select members of the United Nations that signed the declaration at Washington, D.C. on the 1st of January 1942. India participated in the historic UN Conference of International Organization at San Francisco and signed the Charter at a ceremony held at the Veterans War Memorial in San Francisco on 26 June 1945. We have strongly supported the purposes and principles of the United Nations in the spirit of multilateralism. Independent India viewed its membership of the United Nations as an important guarantee for maintaining peace and security. We stood at the forefront, not just in the United Nations but outside it as well, during the years of struggle against colonialism and apartheid. We were actively engaged in the historic Afro-Asian Conference at Bandung, Indonesia in 1955. 5 years later, India was the co-sponsor of the landmark 1960 Declaration of the UN on granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, which proclaimed the need to unconditionally end colonialism in all its forms and manifestation. India was also elected as the first chair of the UN Decolonization Committee. We were amongst the most outspoken critics of apartheid and racial discrimination in South Africa. In fact, India was the first country to raise this issue in the United Nations. India's status as a founding member and leader of the non-aligned movement and the Group of 77 cemented its position within the United Nations as a leading advocate of the concerns and aspirations of developing countries and of the creation of a more equitable international economic and political order. We have had pioneering Indians at the United Nations. Mr. Arcot Ramaswamy Mudaliar was the first president of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, in 1946. Mrs. Hansa Mehta, India's delegate on the UN Human Rights Commission in 1947-48, was responsible for changing the language of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from all men are created equal to all human beings are created equal, highlighting the need for gender equality. Mrs. Lakshmi Menon, India's delegate to the Third Committee in 1948, argued forcefully in favor of non-discrimination based on sex. Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit became the first woman to be elected President of the United Nations General Assembly in 1953. On international peace and security, India has a long and unparalleled history of service in UN peacekeeping, having contributed more personnel than any other country. India's long-standing service has not come without cost. India has lost more peacekeepers than any other member state. We salute them. India also has a long tradition of sending women to UN peacekeeping missions. In 2007, India became the first country to deploy an all-women contingent. The formed police unit in Liberia, where our women officers were hailed as role models. We have been a powerful votary of South-South cooperation. In 2017, India started the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, the first ever single country South-South cooperating initiative at the United Nations. The $100 million fund facility was started to support SDG-related projects across the developing world. In April 2018, a $50 million Commonwealth window was created under the Fund to Support Developing Countries in the Commonwealth. Prime Minister Modi brought yoga to the United Nations in 2014, recognizing the holistic approach of yoga to health and well-being. On 11th of December 2014, the United Nations proclaimed 21st June as the International Day of Yoga. Since then, yoga is being celebrated globally with fervor and enthusiasm. On environment, India's efforts in popularizing solar energy through the International Solar Alliance was recognized in 2018 when UNEP selected Prime Minister Modi for the Champions of the Earth Award. India has also helped solarize the UN through the Gandhi Solar Park installed on the terrace of the United Nations headquarters in New York. India has partnered UN Women since its inception to address the critical issues concerning gender equality and empowerment of women in national and global context. On disarmament, India is committed to non-proliferation in all its aspects. India remains committed to the goal of a nuclear weapon-free world and complete elimination of nuclear weapons. While not being a signatory to the 1951 Convention on Refugees, India has always been a shining example of the way we have opened our hearts to millions of refugees who come to India looking for safety and sanctuary. To commemorate the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, Prime Minister Modi hosted a high-level event on the sidelines of the 74th United Nations General Assembly in 2019.
गांधी जी भारतीय थे, लेकिन सिर्फ भारत के नहीं थे। आज ये मंच इसका जीवंत उदाहरण है।
It is a great pleasure and a great honor to be here to mark the 150th anniversary of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi, one of the giants of the 20th century, a global icon of peace and an advocate for the most vulnerable.
Truth and non-violence are the greatest force at our disposal, and Mahatma Gandhi remains even more relevant for mankind than any time before. However, on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, it is clear to us that United Nations and indeed multilateralism itself need to change to reflect contemporary realities to enable them to remain effective and credible. Towards this, Prime Minister Modi has called for reformed multilateralism and reform of multilateral system as essential to ensure that the international system is inclusive and caters to requirements of all countries, which will in turn facilitate stronger action. We also believe that the current crisis that we face, especially in the context of COVID-19, provide the seed for new opportunities. It is in this context that External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar launched India's priorities for its candidature to the United Nations Security Council. We have called it NORMS, an acronym for New Orientation for a Reformed Multilateral System. India's priorities include new opportunities for progress, effective response to international terrorism, reforming multilateral system, comprehensive approach to international peace and security, and technology with a human touch. I am confident that at a time when we are poised to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and later the 75th anniversary of India's independence in 2022, India's presence in the Security Council will help bring to the world our ethos that the world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam.